Welcome to today's explainer. Look, if you've ever found yourself just staring blankly at a new business plan, feeling completely paralyzed, well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're pulling some absolutely game-changing insights right out of Jonathan Reed's book, Start a Business from Zero. We are going to completely demystify how businesses actually work. We're going to strip away all the chaos, the corporate buzzwords, the endless internet noise, and show you exactly how to take a vague idea and turn it into a simple working system. We are literally going to build the engine. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll separate the surface from the engine. Then we'll break down the value creation loop, talk about translating customer needs, and do some real-world mapping with a cafe versus an online store. Finally, we'll look at reducing your cognitive load and end with a quick challenge.
All right, section 1, the surface versus the engine. Stop decorating and start building.
This is a really painful reality that a lot of beginners crash into. And I want you to ask yourself a super direct question right now. Are you building a business engine, or are you just decorating the surface? It's kind of a tough question, I know, but as your advisor today, I really need to challenge you on this. You see, most beginners don't struggle because business is some impossibly complicated science. They struggle because they focus all their time and energy on the exact wrong things, which gives them this false illusion of progress. Just take a look at the contrast here. Over on the left side, we've got the illusion of progress. This is where beginners get completely stuck, agonizing for days over the perfect shade of blue for their logo or endlessly tweaking the About page on their website. Now, I'm not saying those things are completely useless, but they are literally just the surface. It's exactly like picking out curtains for a house that doesn't even have a foundation yet. But over on the right, that's the actual engine. Knowing your customer, clearly understanding their problem, creating a real solution, making a clear offer, and generating revenue. That is the actual mechanism that drives results.
But man, beginners fall into these traps all the time. First up, jumping into advanced stuff way too early, like worrying about marketing funnels or scaling before you even understand how a single dollar flows through your business. Second is hyper-focusing on those visible surface-level elements we just talked about. Third, treating your business like a random checklist of disconnected chores. You think, oh, I need an Instagram account, without understanding how it connects to the big picture. And finally, the absolute biggest trap of all. Designing a solution without actually knowing what the customer's problem is in the first place. If you do that, your core system is just fundamentally broken. So how do we fix it? We need to stop seeing business as this chaotic checklist and start looking at it as a simple, repeatable sequence.
Which brings us to section 2, the value creation loop. It's a simple sequence, not a chaotic checklist.
At its absolute core, a business is just a simple loop. Step 1, you find a specific customer and figure out a real difficulty they're dealing with. Step 2, you create a solution for that difficulty. Step 3, you make them an offer. Basically, a super clear description of how you can help them and what they get. Step 4, you get paid. That's the revenue exchange right there. Step 5, you actually deliver the value you promised. And step 6, you repeat and refine that whole process. Think of it as a continuous bridge between a customer's problem and the exact result they want. No problem? Well, then there's no need for the bridge. But finding that problem is where things can get a little tricky.
And that leads us to section 3, translating customer needs, turning confusion into clarity. So identifying the real problem isn't always a walk in the park. You really have to view your business as a translation system because, let's be honest, customers often have a really hard time articulating what they actually need. They're going to describe their symptoms, not the underlying cause. For example, a local shop owner might tell you, hey, I need a flashy new website, when their actual underlying problem is simply, I don't have enough local foot traffic. Your job, the entire purpose of your business, is to translate that vague confusion into absolute clarity, and then into a concrete solution. This is exactly why having a deep understanding of the problem is way, way more valuable than having some hyper-sophisticated, complicated solution. Because if you solve the wrong problem, your business engine is going to stall out, no matter how gorgeous that new website is. Let's make this super concrete. Okay, section 4, real mapping, cafe versus online, applying the model to real-world engines. Let's apply this value loop to a couple of real-world engines. We're pulling this right out of the mapping exercise in chapter 4 of Jonathan Reed's book. We are going to trace the exact path from problem to payment for two completely different businesses. Let's look at the local cafe first. The customer? The neighborhood local. Their problem? They desperately need caffeine and maybe a quiet place to crack open their laptop and work. Now look at the online store. The customer there is a niche internet shopper, and their problem is that they need a very specific, specialty product they just can't find in their local town.
Now look at delivery and service. This is where you see the stark differences. The cafe's delivery is immediate. It's face-to-face. It's a sensory experience with the smell of coffee. The online store? That delivery is asynchronous. It's fulfilled digitally and physically shipped out days later. Even the revenue collection is totally different. You got physical cash or card at a counter versus a digital checkout cart. But here is the massive takeaway. Notice what is absolutely identical between the two? The engine. Both of these businesses run on the exact same underlying loop. They find a customer, solve a problem, make an offer, get paid, and deliver value. Once you see that underlying structure, everything changes. Which brings us to our next major point.
Section 5. Reducing cognitive load. Why simplicity is your greatest asset.
So let's talk about reducing your cognitive load. Have you ever sat down at your desk fully intending to work on your business idea and just felt entirely hopelessly paralyzed? Listen to me, that is not a failure of your intelligence. It's actually a structural problem explained by cognitive load theory. When information feels chaotic and disconnected, the ambiguity skyrockets, and your brain, naturally wanting to conserve energy, just hesitates. It delays or it avoids taking action altogether. But when information is structured clearly, like that simple 6-step loop we just talked about, your brain processes it super efficiently. Once you understand the basic mechanics of a business, you replace all that heavy intimidation with actionable, step-by-step structure, because clarity always increases action.
But here's the catch. We have to fight our own human nature on this. We have to fight what the author calls the overcomplication reflex. For some reason, beginners always feel like if a business model is simple, it can't possibly be real or legitimate. So what do? They start adding all these unnecessary features. They expand the scope of the idea way too early. They desperately try to make the business look more impressive on the surface. It's all driven by this illusion of explanatory depth. We falsely assume that complexity equals sophistication. But in the real world, complexity usually just destroys your effectiveness.
I really want you to burn this quote into your memory. A simple machine that works is more valuable than a complex one that doesn't. Absolutely crucial. Simplicity is not a lack of sophistication. True simplicity is the clarity you achieve only after you've stripped away all the unnecessary junk.
So, moving forward, whenever you start to feel lost or overwhelmed, I want you to completely reframe your thinking. Stop asking yourself, how do I build a complex, impressive business? Instead, ask, how do I make this simple enough to actually work? Go right back to that basic system and ask yourself, which part of the loop is unclear right now? Is it the customer? Is it their problem? Is it the offer? Taking your vague, overwhelming confusion and turning it into one specific question is exactly how you maintain your momentum. All right, we have covered a ton of ground today.
Let's wrap up with Section 6. Test yourself. The value loop exercise.
It is time to put all of this into practice. I'm issuing you a 48-hour challenge, straight from the behavioral exercises in the source material. Sometime in the next 2 days, I want you to pick one real-world business that you personally interact with. It could be your local gym, your favorite streaming service, or even just the grocery store down the street. I want you to mentally map out its full system. Identify their specific customer. Define the exact problem they are solving, and then trace the exact path of how they get paid and how they actually deliver that value. If you do this casually and consistently, I promise you, you'll stop seeing businesses as these intimidating, highly polished surfaces, and you will start seeing right through them to the simple, understandable processes running underneath. And that brings us to our final thought. I want you to take that exact same magnifying glass and turn it inward. If you were to map out your own business idea right now using this simple loop, which part is actually missing? Do you actually know the exact problem you're solving, or are you just decorating the surface? It is time to stop decorating and start building the engine. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, I highly encourage you to go tackle that 48-hour challenge right now.